Hi, I'm Janet Deneef, founder and director of the Ubud Writers and Readers Festival. You are about to hear one of our highlight conversations recorded live for our 2022 festival, which explored the role of the written word in upholding humanity's values and freedoms through our festival theme, Memayu Hayuning Bawana, Uniting Humanity. So please settle in and let the magic of our 19th festival continue.
Thank you so much. Wonderful MC. Hello, selamat datang semuanya. Matur suksema sampun rawu. Thank you so much for joining us today on the final day of the festival. I know that everybody's starting to feel a little bit tired, a little bit weary. You've had a lot of fantastic conversations. So thank you so much for joining us for this one. So before we begin, I'd like to ask a question to the audience and also to our speakers, if you know the answer. The question is, does anyone know when the very first adaptation of a book was made? Or can anyone take a guess? Anyone take a guess? Around about what time period? The year was 1896. And it was an adaptation of a book by a French author whose name I'm not going to try and pronounce. Now, remarkably, the very first film adaptation made in the United States, the very first full-length film made in the United States was an adaptation of Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. That was in 1909. Now, Indonesia's first film adaptation was made in 1941. From Mara Rosli's novel Siti Nurbaya, directed by Lee Tek Sui, who was active in the early cinema of what was then pre-independence Indonesia. And if you're interested, Siti Nurbaya followed 2 star-crossed lovers. So literary works have been adapted for the screen for almost 130 years now. And right now, books are providing stories for the screen, both big and small, now more than ever. Is that suaranya gimana? Agak ganggu ya suaranya?
Iya, agak sedikit terasa.
Okay, bagaimana ini? So, nearly 4,000 film and television adaptation deals have been made since the year 2000. And last year, for the very first time, there were more TV adaptation deals made than cinema deals. So that's a really good indicator of the demands for film versus television. Maaf, suaranya ganggu banget. Ini. Nah, itu lebih enak. Makasih ya. Itu jauh lebih enak.
Apaan tuh?
Gitu. Lepas aja. Lepas aja. Maaf semuanya. Nah, oke deh. So as I just said, more TV deals are being made for adaptations these days than feature-length films, which says a lot about the current demands for short versus long, easier to process versus big picture productions. So today it's a great honour to welcome 3 outstanding creatives, very diverse creatives. On my left is Kamila Andini, who's one of Indonesia's foremost film directors working today. So it's a huge honour to be with her here. Next we have Ahmad Fuadi, who's a social worker, novelist and journalist. His debut novel, Negeri Lima Menara, is the first in a trilogy. And it was one of the best-selling novels of 2009. So both this book and the second in the trilogy have been adapted for the big screen. He's also had TV series produced as well from his works. Finally, Kirstin Chen is the author of 3 best-selling novels, Soy Sauce for Beginners, Bury What We Cannot Take, and Counterfeit, the latest of which is being adapted for TV by Sony Pictures. And she joins us all the way from New York. So thank you very much, Kirstin, Ahmad, Kamila. Big round of applause for our speakers.
Thank you.
Thanks to you for dealing with the sound issues. I'm going to begin by asking our panellists to introduce themselves and their work just a little bit further, and then we'll get into some questions for our speakers. So maybe beginning with you, Kamila.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. I'm Kamila Andini. I'm a film writer and also director. My fourth film, the latest film, it's screened last night here called Before Now and Then, which is the film was also adapted from a chapter out of a novel. My previous film, my third film, Uni, was the other way around actually. So we made the film first, and then the writer writing a novel out of a film. And right now I'm still working on an OTT series based on the novel that is Kretek, Segera Grow. Still in the process.
Hi everyone, my name is Ahmad Fuadi. I wrote my first novel in 2009. It was published by Gramedia, and I was quite lucky because it's become a bestseller in the first month and the second month. And after 2 years, it got adaptation into a movie. And Negeri Lima Menara, or The Land of Five Towers, is first of the trilogy. And the second one, Ranah Tiga Warna, or The Earth of Three Color, was adapted into a movie 3 months ago. Well, it was on the theater 3 months ago, but the production was 5 years ago, maybe.
Before the pandemic. Yeah.
Before the pandemic. And my first novel also got adapted into a series or streaming series. And right now I'm working on the fourth adaptation of my novel, but it's still secret that the studio told me. But the production has completed. Now they're working on the final editing and the arrangement when they're going to launch it.
Sorry, I'm fiddling with my mic. I'm thrilled to be here. My name is Kirstin Chen. My most recent novel is called Counterfeit. Came out in June. This is the story of two Asian American women who band together to grow a counterfeit handbag scheme into a global enterprise, shattering the model minority myth along the way. This is the first of my books to get optioned for TV by a major Hollywood studio, and we're kind of in the very early stages of developing.
Thank you, panelists. Kamila, my first question is for you. So your film Before Now and Then, or Nana, which screened at the festival last night, maybe some of you have seen it, it's not adapted from an entire novel, it's just adapted from one particular chapter. Now generally, almost always, we can say always, your films always have strong central female characters, and they always scrutinize the patriarchy. So what was it about this woman in this book and this one particular chapter that made you feel that it would work well for a film?
Well, it's based on a novel called Jais Darga Namaku. So it's an autobiography novel about one of the foremost art dealer, Indonesian art dealer here, Jais Darga. And there is a chapter called An Egg that talk about her mom. So Jais Darga is a Sundanese woman in art, and I know her for quite some times. And when, of course, I, as a friend and a really close friend, I read the novel. But when I read this particular chapter, I felt very connected in a way that it's also somehow a story of my grandmother. So in my movies, usually I always trying to portray certain culture, Indonesian culture. So my first movie is about the Bajonis in Silabus Island, and then my second one is in Bali, Skala with the local language as well. And my third feature, Uni, is in Serang with the society. So when I read the chapter, and I'm a Sundanese actually, I felt like this is gonna be interesting as it's gonna be my first time exploring my own roots of culture. And I felt very connected because my family also, it's set in 1950s to late 1960s. And that's also when the era when my grandmother lives, and we have a background of historical of deity and communism as well in that period of time where my family also very close to it. So I felt it's gonna be my first time exploring about my own root and my own family through this story of Jais Dargah's mother, and she also agreed with it. So yeah, we tried to develop it from there.
So did you work closely with the author on your film?
Yeah, so we worked together. I worked together to write the script with the writer of the novel, Ahda Imran, because he knows everything about the family. For me as a filmmaker, the challenges was it's very autobiographical. So it's a good autobiographical, but as a filmmaker, I want to say more than just the life of someone. What is actually the film talks about. This is where the adaptation starting to come out in the process, like what kind of things that I want to explore, or theme that I want to explore, following the life of the mother Nana Sulami. So that's when it started.
Do you often, with your ideas for film, so you whenever you read a book, do you think this could possibly work for a film, or perhaps not? Were you a big reader as a child?
Yeah, I'm a big reader, and I think it depends. I mean, in film, creative and production has to match somehow. In order to make the novel into the screen, sometimes you can make the whole entire novel because it's going to be a big production, for example. But sometimes you also have limitation that it's going to be very heavy if the whole novel will be screened it will be produced. So those kind of things that is discussed actually in the process, like the scale of production, and also the creative objective and vision that we want to make. Does it match? Does it, coming together, everything.
And very interestingly, your film Uni was first a film, and then it was adapted into a novel, which does happen sometimes. It's not very common.
Yeah.
But what was that process like?
Yeah, I mean, my film is always very personal and somehow very intimate as well. I always felt, but the film has always started with the big questions or context or background or text even. But I always feel that this medium, even though it's very rich and it can engage audience emotionally, not everything can be explained in the film. We need a lot of time. We need to choose what things has to be there and not. Where I think in a novel or in a book, you have more broader canvas to talk about the subcontext, the background story, and things like that. So in terms of Uni, what was interesting is I worked very closely to a local writer community called Rumah Dunia. It's under the Golagong author, one of the author in Indonesia called Golagong, who made a very famous novel as well. And there is, and we work together with them because it was in the local language. So we work together with them to translate the script, the dialogue into the local language, and then they are mentoring as well the actors and also the scenes to be able to deliver in a local language. So when we were shooting, one of the author, he said that he was very interested in the story because as someone who comes from the area, he felt that the story really speaks to their society, to his society. So he wondered if he could write the novel out of it, and I felt like my movies, I think everyone can actually make something out of it. It's not mine to do, and I felt like it's even more interesting if you were as a local author that write the story about your own society and about this issue. I think I would even love to read.
It's a huge honor.
It's a huge honor for me, and so we did that, and I gave him freedom to add and to put even more things, constructed the world of uni even more to the novel. So yeah,
Incredible.
it's basically.
Thank you, Kamila. Now move on to you, Ahmad. We've spoken earlier about the closeness that you feel to your storylines, and also the need to let go when an adaptation is made from a film, because as we've just said, it's impossible to capture everything. So can you please share a little bit about your involvement in the adaptations of your films?
When I was contacted by a studio, I was surprised because when I start writing, I didn't expect to be filmed right away. And well, I was excited, but also very anxious because my novel is my baby, I pick every single word with my heart. And my novel Negeri Lima Menara is partly inspired by my own story, so even closer. And now someone else will be taking my novel and try to make it a movie out of it. So I'm super excited, but at the same time very anxious. There is a feeling that I cannot let go my word. But later on, I talk with my family, with my friends, that if we want to have our idea going further, not only to the readers but to broader audience, we have to have another medium to move to another medium. And movie is one of the most popular medium that people can access. And I talked with the scriptwriter, Salman Aristo. He's one of the most respected scriptwriter in Indonesia. And after long discussion with him, he told me, hey, movie is not a book. If we adapt your book into a movie, it's not a photocopy of your book. It's not copy and paste. It's an adaptation. And from that moment, now I get the point. Before I cannot let it go, but hey, it's not apple to apple. So we have to appreciate these two works of art separately, differently, individually. A book as a work of art of a writer, and a movie is a work of art of a huge different people. It's work of a team. And from that moment, I'm at peace right now. The first movie was so difficult, but now in my fourth movie, I'm okay. So that's their baby now. That's not mine anymore.
You've finally been able to let go. So it's clear though that some of your readers, your fans, have not been able to let go.
That's
So
a problem.
You've received feedback from your readers that they're very disappointed and upset even by these adaptations. There was somebody who said, itu kurang indah, itu salah. So his readers are expecting a direct adaptation of his books. So I'm wondering what you feel about the general understanding of what an adaptation is in Indonesia, or is it just these very particular avid readers of yours who want it to be word by word, chapter by chapter?
So, from what I observed, there are two struggles actually when we when we do the adaptation of a novel. The first struggle is within the writer itself. What I said is a struggle within me to let go the word. And the second is the struggle in the readers, in the mind of readers. Because as we read a novel, we have our own theater of mind. What it looks like inside our mind when we read every chapter, every characters. And now when we watch a movie, it's designed by someone, a director, a producer, which is quite disconnected with our preference, with our reference. In that sense, I understand the protest from my readers, because when the movie was launched, my social media are full of comments from my readers. Why we don't have this character? This strongly related to me. Why we don't have this scene? So quite many, offense comments, but also quite many of them value the depiction of the film. So there are two part of readers: the die-hard readers, they don't care about the movie, but they still watch it. That's quite good. If you don't care about the movie, don't watch the movie. And the second one, they don't read the books. They know the books, or they read the cover of the book and the back cover. And now they have the luxury of looking at the story through pictures. And my role as a writer that already feel at peace, I try to explain to my readers that let's appreciate both body of work differently, because it's not similar, it's not apple to apple, it's different. But it's come from the same spirit, the spirit of the novel.
Two separate pieces of art. And it's interesting that you said it took you a long process to let go.
Right.
And I'm sure it was the same for you, Kirstin, with your book, needing to let go of all of the research and all of the character development. I've got something a little bit embarrassing to admit. When I first met Kirstin, I just foolishly assumed that she was a mother, that she's a parent, because of the depth of the parenting challenges and joys in her work, which is a terrible assumption to make. Thank you so much. And you did reassure me, and you said it's okay, other people have assumed the same.
True. I got picked for a kind of big mom book club in the US, and I don't think they realized that I wasn't a parent. And I told them, I did tell them, the moderator, before I did the book club meeting, but it was funny, it's a book club for moms, by moms, but I was honored to be a part of it.
And I think that is testament to the depth of your research and the quality of your writing as well, that so many people make that foolish assumption. So my question is, with the enormous amount that goes into a book, and this could apply to any artist really who's had anything adapted, how do you release? How do you let go of your child? How do you let go?
Actually, I think for me personally, it was not that bad. It was easy for me to let go. And I think that, Ahmed's reaction and my reaction are kind of the two only logical reactions. Either you feel an immense urge to keep control of every aspect of the project, or you feel an immense urge to step away and say, I understand that this is a project that is going to live beyond my book, and let the experts have at it. And I think that was the kind of instinct that I went with from the start. I mean, there were a couple non-negotiables. So, to give a little bit of context, this is a novel with two Asian women leads. And I was incredibly surprised by how much studio interest we had in this book, because I've never seen a TV series helmed by two Asian women leads in Hollywood that, and we're not talking about two women who are part of the same family, and so there's a reason why all the stars are Asian. These are just two separate Asian women. And when I met with my first studio, I was almost certain that they would ask me to change the race of one of the protagonists. And, and I already had the kind of arguments in my mind, obviously if we could get a white actor or an African-American actor or a Hispanic actor, we might be able to expand our range. And I was already kind of mentally preparing myself for what I could accept. And I was floored that when I ended up talking to 8 different studios, and each of them were incredibly committed to finding Chinese American actresses to helm this show. And I was so gratified that they understood that the race of the characters was inextricably linked to the story.
It's a core part of the story.
You could not tell the same story with other actors, even if they were people of color or from minority groups in the US. So that was incredibly surprising. They were really committed to finding an Asian American showrunner, preferably a woman, and they have followed through on, they've followed through on this. And it's just been It's been a process that has really exceeded my expectations, and I know that in a large part of that is due to the success of Crazy Rich Asians, the movie.
The Crazy Rich Asians effect.
And that if we had gone on submission, say in 2017 or in early 2018, before that movie proved to be so successful, it would not be the same landscape at all. And so on the one hand, I feel so grateful for that. On the other hand, I think it's very dangerous that one film can make such a difference for an entire community of artists. And when the next film doesn't succeed, as inevitably one of them won't, what is the backlash going to be? And so it's an interesting time to be involved in Hollywood.
Absolutely. When you were writing your book, did you think that it would make good television?
I never thought that this would happen. I mean, I'm not a very visual writer. Like, I'm someone who pays a lot more attention to sentences and language and characterization and the kind of interiority of a character. I don't think in kind of sweeping scenes. So no, it didn't occur to me. And also the fact that this was written for an Asian audience. Like, I knew I was writing to an Asian American audience and an Asian audience. The fact that it has resonated so widely has really taken me by surprise.
It's interesting that you say that you're not a very visual writer, because I feel like some of your descriptions in particular are so intricate that is going to make a great scene building in a film. And I just like to read one of Kirstin's sentences, which just made me read it again because it was so specific. So Ava, the protagonist, and her nanny Maria are dealing with Ava's, I think he's 2 or 3, he's 2 years old at the time, and he's a little bit problematic. He does like to have a bit of a tantrum, but he's a sweet, loving child. But Maria and Ava are dealing with a tantrum. He's starting to cool down, and Ava says, the only thing to do was to hunker down and wait it out. Maria and I making loud, soothing sounds like a couple of white noise machines. And in that moment, I just thought, how do you allow for television to be made when you know a line like that may not be included? So that's...
Well, I will have, one thing I'd like to add, just based on what Ahmad was saying too about his books being his babies. I got a great piece of advice from the writer David Ebershoff, who some of you may know his name, because he wrote The Danish Girl, which became an Academy Award-winning movie. And he said, his advice to novelists is, your book is your baby, but the film adaptation is your grandchild. So you do the fun stuff, and when it gets hard, you pass it back to the parents.
That's an excellent way to describe it.
Thank you.
So get back to Kamila. I know that we're not allowed to talk too much about this, but Kamila is the first Indonesian film director to have a TV series commissioned by Netflix. So quite a huge achievement. So this is an adaptation of the book Gadis Kretek by Rati Kumala, who's been to festivals in the past, and it was translated by, so read it in English, it's excellent translation by Annie Tucker, and if you've read Eka Korniawan's Beauty is a Wound, you know what a good translator, how good of a translator she is. It's a novel that's extremely broad in scope in what it covers in Indonesian history, from Dutch occupation, Japanese occupation, the genocide of 1965. So if I can ask just one little question, Kamila, how do you choose what to include and what to leave out when you're covering such a broad scope in history?
Well, actually, to be honest, I'm not actually allowed to talk
about
this from the studio.
Okay, maybe we can talk.
But actually, I can answer just a little bit. So the writer with the team is actually the one who write the story. So they are the one who choose which one is in. I'm only a director in the TV series. So they're actually the one who decided which one is to be included and not.
Yeah, no, I sort of said you and your team, and that you're involved in script writing as well. But that's highly anticipated, released next year on Netflix. So we're all really a lot of people are looking forward to that one. Now, I've got a question just for anyone who'd like to answer. Now that we know that the demand for TV adaptations is so high, and I feel like often in TV series, we can all bring it back down to a series of characteristics. They build worlds. Let's think of the most popular series like Game of Thrones. They've built their own inner world. There's multiple characters. These are the characteristics that we can see across the most popular TV series. And with so many book adaptations made from books, do you feel like the success of TV streaming content is going to change the way that contemporary fiction is written? Would anyone like to jump in?
Well, from my perspective, I will start writing a book without thinking of next project as a movie. So I think it is better that way for me, because I don't over expect it and I don't over manage the structure of the story. But the advancement of the new medium like streamings is also good for writers, because there are more room right now for us to be adapted, and for a writer is of course a good thing. And you know, the strength of the streaming, if we stream in any platform right now, it will go forever. Versus if we have a movie, it will stay as a movie, at one standalone movie, but the series on streaming, it can be anywhere, cross region, and can be accessed 24/7, I think. So that's from my perspective as a writer. I will focus on the book first. Yeah.
How about you, Kirstin?
I feel the same way. I think, and I mentioned this a little earlier, that for me, I'm really focused on interiority and inner thoughts. And that is, literature is the only medium that can give people access to another person's inner thoughts. Film can do so many amazing, beautiful things, but it can't do that. And so I would hate for writers to kind of write with the goal of adaptation in mind. I don't know what that means necessarily, but if we were all to kind of focus on plot and concept and to give up interiority, I don't think we would ever do that. But what a tragedy, right? Because, there are two different mediums and each has their strengths.
Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, in my perspective as a director, I think, streaming, especially streaming TV series, yes, it's already changed the game in terms of screen works in many ways. Of a structure of story, even the building of the characters, a lot of things. I think the possibility of book making into a TV series, I think it will be a lot in the future. As I said before, in terms of when you make film, it has to be matched in terms of production and the story itself. With the medium of film, sometimes it cannot capture the whole thing in the book. But TV series with the longer episodes and it's possible most of the way. So it has a lot more room to be able to capture as many things as possible from the book. I think it's gonna be a lot.
Can I ask, after working on Garis Kretek, Cigarette Girl, your first series, do you think your next project you'd prefer to do another TV series or return to film? Or a little bit too early to know?
Well, I'm working very organically in a way. I have stories that I want to make, but I don't plan when is it going to be made. I let the universe work. So it depends. I'm actually writing for another movie, my own story actually right now. So it depends when the story or the offer meets me and we have the same vision on it, we have a mutual vision and objective of why we're making it. So it's a lot of factor in a way, what is going to be next. Yeah.
Before we pass over to the audience, just one final question for our panelists. You spoke a lovely phrase before, Ahmad. Books create the theatre of the mind. And I know that as readers, when we love a book, sometimes we don't actually want to see the adaptation because we're afraid that adaptation, those images, those people, they'll replace what we've imagined ourselves. So my question is, a bit of a fun one, Are there any books that you have refused to see the adaptation of because you just love them too much?
I definitely have one. The Elena Ferrante Neapolitan trilogy that was made into a wonderful, I'm told it's a really wonderful HBO series that has won many awards, but I cannot bring myself to watch it. Those are some of my very, very favorite books. And one time I turned on the TV by accident and those characters flickered across the screen and they looked nothing like the ones in my head. And so I knew I couldn't watch them.
What a terrible spoiler.
Well, I'm okay right now, so I'm at peace, you know. So sometimes I'm looking forward to any adaptation, and right now, I'm become more closer to the movie making because on the last adaptation, I was asked to be a screenwriter for my novel. So now I'm on two sides right now, so I'm fine with it.
I would like to add something. I mean, this is something interesting. I would like to add something, if I may. It was actually a very interesting discussion that I have as well last year. There is a book made into film in Indonesia called Vengeance is Mine, ordered by Cash, by Eka Kurniawan. Seperti dendam rindu harus dibayar tuntas. And I mean, I read the novel in the beginning, and I love the novel. And a lot of people before it made into films was also like, do you want to make this out of novel? One of the thing, but that was like the first time I think I felt when I read it, this novel is very good, but there is no way I am able to direct it in a way that the novel has such masculinity depth. That me as a woman, though that usually didn't understand a lot of things, the interior things about man in this kind of society, somehow I can feel it, and I can feel the urge, and it's beautiful in that way. Like I never understand why men is very easy to, like, you know, in that kind of state they like to punch someone.
Yeah, it's extremely violent.
Extremely violent. But when I read it, like I really want to, like I understand why people have that urge to do that because of what happened in their life and things like that. So when I read it, like I felt there's no way I can actually make this into a movie. I felt like it has to be made by a man, and it's something
Interesting. That film is available on Netflix as well.
Yeah.
Vengeance is Mine, All Others Pay Cash is the English title.
Yeah,
Excellent production values.
Yes.
It's a trip back to 1970s Indonesia. Costuming and hair is amazing.
Yeah, and I was very happy at doing this role.
But
actually.
interesting what you say, because it's a very masculine
yes.
film. Audience, any questions from our audience? Right here in the front. Do you want to have is there a roving mic available? Thank you. Any other questions at all? So we'll have one here. Maybe we'll collect 3 questions first and then we'll have answers.
Well, I'm just Narendra from Jakarta, and I have a question. Since this is on the topic of the big screen and film in general, one of the big things about issues, like, do you as writers and screenwriters, let's say, have preferences in adaptation? Just a question, because in most cases, books are mostly adapted to live action series, whereas there's also media and film like animation. Like when you folks like put a pitch to the studio, you get to choose which one you want to go, or it's really up to them. And considering you, the 3 of you are making lots of good books and works, is there any chance that any of you would ever make or adapt something into animation in the future, or maybe in the present?
Okay.
Animation or particular style?
Well,
Live action or animation?
I think I couldn't. I won't be able to fully answer the question in a way that I'm a kind of author, director, and writer. I have my own personal style in what kind of film that I make. So not every story, and I mean in terms of my movie, it's usually very visual. So not all kind of book a novel can be portrayed in my kind of style as well, in a way. Or the producer or the writer may be willing to be able to adapt in that kind of way. But basically, I'm very open to anything as long as the vision is actually match everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I also don't have any preference. And from our side as a writer, normally we will listen to the studio or producer point of view because they know the business better than us. And in the process, as a writer, normally I want to be involved in the production. So I prefer to be there, not guarding the process, but I want to be involved to see the process of making a movie. So in 3 of adaptation of my books, I was a creative consultant, meaning I can be anywhere actually. During the process of script writing, sometimes I go to the sets to see the filming, and also I will be in the editing studio sometime. In that rule, I don't decide anything actually, but I have a say, but the final say is still with the producer normally, where the money comes from.
Where the money comes from.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add to that is I've the same, it's a different genre. It's something that I'm not an expert in. I understand that this project, in order for it to be good, has to be my showrunner's vision, And so I think where I am involved, and I have an executive producer credit on this project, is in choosing the showrunner and making sure that we get a showrunner who sees the book the way I do. And then after that, I have to let go of it. And otherwise, she, like we all said, it's not a photocopy of the novel. And so she has to have freedom to bring her vision to life.
There was a question over here. And the third question was...
Hi, Julia from Jakarta. So the first question is, you've all touched on the various differences between books and films as 2 separate mediums or works of art. So in your personal experiences or preferences, what would you say is one of the best film adaptations of a literary work? Maybe you have a special choice, and maybe you could just share why you think it's a really good adaptation. The second question maybe is for Kamila and Ahmad. What are the pros and cons of the writer becoming the screenwriter for his or her own book? What would be the most challenging aspect of that, or what would be the most fun aspect of it? Thank you.
Great questions, thank you.
I'll jump in on the streaming question and on the TV series adaptation question, because I've been paying a lot of attention to this now that my book has been optioned. There was a great HBO series. I don't know if it made it, if it made any news outside of the US, but it's a terrific kind of dystopic tech parody called Made for Love. And that TV series has the best dialogue of any TV series I've ever watched in my entire life. And I think the reason is because the author is the screenwriter and now the showrunner as well. And I think she knows those characters so deeply that the way they speak on screen, it just feels exactly right in a way I've never observed before. And so that would be an argument for adapting your own show. So I don't know.
Any favorites?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. But my first plus point when I was a script writer, I got a chance to learn a new skill because I never write a script for a movie. So when I was asked to be a script writer, I told my producer, okay, this is my first time, so please bear with me. I need time to learn the rope, and I think it was a good self-education. I mean, I have been reading how to write a script properly. I've been talking with the Indonesian scriptwriter to discuss about it. So for me, it's a chance to learn a new skill. The negative point, well, since I know the characters, I know the storyline, I know the subtext behind the story, so I think I know everything, but it's still quite limited because it's from a perspective of a writer. While sometimes I limit the inclusion of new view from other people because I'm the one who make a blueprint, a script of the movie. So I think that's the plus and the minus point of being a scriptwriter. I know what I do, I know the story, but again, to make a strong story, a good story, I believe we need many ideas come together. It's a work of collaboration, and that I think make a better movie.
As an adaptation favorite, it's a lot of great work made, great work of adaptation made from book to TV series or film, I think. So it's hard to choose one, but I remember one of the earliest experience for me when I was a kid, a teenager, maybe watching film made out of an adaptation and read the novel and then watch the movie and then read again the novel was Forrest Gump. I think that was like my first teenager experience. Really seeing how it made the movie and then like you read it again and trying to understand. Seeing the stories in many kind of way of perspective. So it was a fun experience as teenager. And the other question, I never made a book and become a screenwriter about it, but maybe just based on my experience in a way that in every film I always have a context, a research that I have to put into a screen and story. I felt as a creator, you have to have the right amount of distance of view and the context of your work. You cannot very close to it in a way, but you also cannot very detached to it. You always need to find something in balance. So you know enough what you want to do, and you're very firm about it. But also there's a room of exploration and ideas, like what Ahmad just said, that it makes you continuously searching and working on it and make it better and better. So it has to have those both of combination. I think it's like that.
I agree. So I think it's, to make a good movie, maybe we need to strike a balance between three parties. Writers, directors, and producer.
It's a triangle
and
relationship.
there are always struggle and fight and debate during the process.
Any other questions? No hands going up? We do have just a little bit of, oh, here we go, thank you.
Hiya. Yes, I was going to ask about, there is so much more TV adaptations being made now as opposed to movies, which does give the potential for a better telling of a story because you have more time. You've mentioned showrunners a few times. What do you think is the key purpose of a showrunner, and how have your relationships with showrunners worked as both directors and writers?
Great question, thank you.
Is that for me? Oh, I'm in the very early process, so I don't have much to say. I mean, my understanding of a showrunner is they're the head writer and the head producer, and so I have been told that in a streaming series, the showrunner is even more important than the lead actor, even more important than the director, because they are the person who is selling the show. It's their vision, and so we're in negotiations right now. I can't talk too much about it, but this is a person that I out of many, many showrunners that we interviewed, is someone who I think really gets the book, and I hope we get her. Stay tuned for the deadline announcement.
And just finally, next projects, and also, what is the best way for people to access your works across which streaming platforms in particular? So Kamila, we've heard about your next projects. Ahmad, what are you working on at the moment, and what's in the future?
Well, currently my first movie is available on Netflix, Negeri Lima Menara, and the upcoming series maybe early next year. And I'm working on a novel, but still under construction. And what else? Yes, that's all. You can access the movie on streaming right now, and if you need books, it's also available on Amazon everywhere. Because it's printed on the location that you order.
My show is in development, so there's nothing to be accessed. I'm working on another novel, very, very early stages. I think it's going to be called Tech Lives, and it's set in Silicon Valley.
Interesting. So, no, not dense history dense. Like you've had quite a trajectory in terms of the time era. Yeah, the eras that your books are set in. Excellent. Well, thank you so much to our three panelists, Kamila, Ahmad, and Kirstin. Thank you so much, and thanks for being here with us on the panel.